It's thank you for doing this interview, by the way. We've just got this wonderful Asia box set, which I've got a copy here.
Yeah, it's rather
It's,
nice, isn't it?
it's very nice indeed. Um, my question is, what's prompted the release of that box set at this juncture? Is there a reason why it's come out now?
Well, I think it never really got a proper airing. You know, when it first came out, it was just released on VHS many years ago, and then it got sort of buried into the vaults, as it were. And I think that we relicensed a lot of stuff with BMG, and they picked it up and thought, you know, we'd like to give this a proper release, and so they put together this with our help. We put together this fantastic box set, which is it's a real keepsake, I think.
Yeah. Was it difficult integrating Greg Lake into the band for this show?
It was pretty tough, yeah, because Greg was not familiar with any of the material, and the a lot of the songs were not exactly suitable to his register, so we had to do a bit of jiggery pokery. But I think all things considered, you know, he did a fantastic job coming in and you know, taking over a lead vocal and a bass role and learning those songs was no mean feat.
Yeah. I often wondered how disappointed are you that the band never got to revisit the Buddha Khan with John Wetton, because I think it was planned, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think we when we got back together again with the reunion tours in 2006 onwards, uh, we did go to Japan and we played some big places. We played a big sports stadium in Tokyo. So it was you know, I think it was nice that we could do it with John as well, and certainly um, you know the fever had not gone away. You know, from the Japanese fans. I think they were very great. You know, they were very grateful to see, you know, the original band there as well.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I'm curious to know, actually, a question I've always wanted to ask you is the first Asia album was recorded in London, but the second Asia album, if I'm not mistaken, was recorded in Canada. Why did you decide to record the second one in Canada?
I think that Mike Stone was working over there quite a lot, our producer. We did the backing tracks in the UK, but then we thought we'd get away and get on the American continent, close to the record label. Mike had worked in the studio quite a lot before, and he was quite comfortable there. So I think that's what drew us in now. So we finished the album off there pretty much, and that was it really.
All right. I just thought it might be something special about that particular studio. It's just
Well, I think it was pretty special studio in so much as bands like Rush had recorded there. And when just before we got in there, Sting had, well, the Police had just finished doing Synchronicity.
all
So
right.
I actually got to hear Every Breath You Take way before it was actually released, because one of the engineers there had a copy of it that one of the mixes that they'd done, so yeah, Rainbow recorded there. It was a very popular studio, I think, because it was pretty remote. You know, it was outside of Montreal, up in a place called Morin Heights, and I think that you know, it was a great way of collecting everyone together without too many distractions, and so that was it really.
No, okay. One of my subscribers has asked. He's asked for your opinion on the Aura album from 2001. He said, "I'd be interested in your thoughts on this record. And was it true that you were unhappy with the production on that album?"
No, I think it was pretty. I think it was pretty good actually in terms of. I think maybe John Payne wasn't too happy with it, but I thought it was really good production from Simon Hanhart, who was the guy on that album. He was very meticulous. He's done quite a lot of stuff since. I think certainly in the prog field. I think he did a lot of Arena, that band Arena. You know, the prog rock band. But no, it's I think, you know, there's some good stuff on that album. Some great players. You know, we had people like Tony Levin and Vinnie Colaiuta and Simon Phillips, and that was a real collection of great players there. So yeah, I thought the album was pretty good in the whole.
Yeah, it's probably a bit cheeky. I've got. I thought having the opportunity to speak to you, I had to ask you. First of all, how much did you contribute to Kate Bush's Dreaming album, and what was it like working with Kate Bush?
Uh, it was great. I only really did one track, but I spent a bit of time with her and showed her the. I had this newfangled sampler at the time called a Fairlight, which was a revolutionary keyboard, and she was very interested because I was one of the few. There were only about a handful of people who actually had one, and and of course, it was sudden all of a sudden you had this digital mellotron that you could make all sorts of noises with that you couldn't get out of regular synthesizers. So she was pretty fascinated in it, and I showed her how to use it, and I think she bought one shortly after it. She asked me to put some of these horn parts, stabby horns, on the song "Sat in Your Lap," which of course was a top 10 single, I think, and so. But that was it really. But she's a fantastic musician and very interesting way of working. She's like the sort of female Peter Gabriel. That sort of area really.
She comes across as quite reclusive. So, sat in your lap, was that the only song on that album you contributed to?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, what was your reaction when you first heard you'd be joining Yes? And did you feel a lot of resentment from Yes fans? I know Trevor Horn has said that he felt a lot of heat, when he was at the front of the stage. I wonder how you felt at the time joining Yes.
I think it was worse for Trevor because John Anderson had never been replaced before, or so he'd been there from the very off, and up until that time had been the revered uh, guru, lead singer, whatever you want to call it. So I think Trevor got a lot of stick just for being Trevor, and I think because he didn't have the same look of the flowing robes and the long wavy whispering hair and all the rest of it. From my standpoint, I think it was probably a little bit more. They were quite a bit less vitriolic because, of course, I was the fourth keyboard player that had been in Yes at that point. So, and I think also the strength of the album, the drama album, converted some people. I know that there were some of the die-hard fans didn't really ever embrace our presence in it, but I think that the whole thing about Yes is that there are so many different chapters of the band, and I think that if the real fans want to get behind it, then they should accept the way that if you follow a football team, you don't expect to see Bobby Charlton turning up for Manchester United, So I think a lot of we really helped Yes move on to another era, into the 80s, and of course then they became very mainstream as a band in the 80s, which was a complete change from the previous incarnations in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean the drama album has a very distinct sound, and I attribute that much to your keyboard playing. Was it a band decision that you wanted a very different sounding album, or did it just turn out that way?
I think it turned out that way. I think they wanted to, because Chris, Steve and Alan were rehearsing as a three-piece, and so that was really how we came together. And I think that seeing them really, impeccable rehearsing and these great sounds they had going, uh, they really wanted us in there to help them with the writing, and I think that's how it all started. And then, of course, we got involved with them, and then Chris, I think, said, "Well, to Trevor, you're a singer, and Geoff's a keyboard player, so why don't we join forces and see what we come up with?" And so there, it really started from a writing relationship, but then moved on from there.
Okay, okay. Um, as you said, you were about the fourth keyboard player to join Yes. When it came to the previous parts recorded by Rick Wakeman and Patrick Moraz and Tony Kaye, what were, how do you approach that? Do you sort of think, well, I'm going to reinterpret them in my own way, or do you just play their parts verbatim? How do you approach that?
Pretty much as close as I can. You know, I think that there's certain signature parts and certain signature sounds that you can't really reinvent. You know, and I think that the organ parts in Roundabout and some of Tony's gritty Hammond parts that are there on the first few albums. I think you have to really respect that's why people got off on it in the first place. So you can't really reinvent the wheel. You know, that's the way that it is. But having said that, I think maybe some of the solo sections there's a bit more leeway to experiment with different things, and of course there's so many things that you can do with the soundscapes and arrangements and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been a very interesting experience for me to actually go through these parts and try and identify what instruments they were playing and get the sounds as close as possible.
Mm. Have you ever dabbled with a mellotron?
Well, I used to have a mellotron in the early days, yeah, with Yes, and in Asia I used a mellotron quite a lot, which was it was a hallmark of progressive music, certainly in the 70s. But I think as time went by, it became less of a feature, well, because of course music was changing quite a lot then in the 80s. So it wasn't really uh, used that much. Although I did use it quite a bit on Asia, I've got to say, flutes and strings and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I got one of my subscribers that said I've always wanted to know is Fly From Here. They reused two Buggles demos, We Can Fly and Sad Night at the Airfield for parts one and two. However, I don't think part three, Madman at the Screens, has ever been confirmed to originate from an old demo, or is it entirely a new track? I wonder if you could clear that up.
It was a demo, but it was the demo that we had for the second Buggles album. So
Mm.
it was never on the it was never really on the table then when we were Yes at the time. So it's something that Trevor and I came up with, and then it got put on the shelf, and then when I rejoined and Trevor was producing the album, he suggested pulling it out, and we played it to the other guys, and they said, "Yeah, it's so great, we'll add that in there." So that's really how that came about.
Do you think we'll ever get remastered box sets of those Buggles albums, or repackaged sets?
Uh, it would be nice. I do speak to Trevor from time to time, so I discussed the possibility of doing a show at some point, which would be fun. But it would be nice to get a nice package together on it, definitely.
One of my subscribers has said, "Tell Geoff that I love the quest. Is there any work towards a new Yes album with this excellent lineup?" And I'd like to add to that: is there any chance that this new lineup of Yes might consider doing an epic sidelong suite?
Possibly. I think that we are working on some stuff at the moment, and I think what happens is bits get added and it sort of expands from that point. So um, it's been nice to get back working with Steve in the studio again, and knowing that of course, the quest was done fairly remotely. Well, the part we never saw Billy or Alan or Jay, so it was their parts were sent over. John was flitting between uh, England and Barbados at the time, so but I think it's I think it's some way to go in some respects. Whether or not there'll be another Close to the Edge comes out, I don't know, but certainly Yes is it's all about experimentation. I think we often try and do things that are not, expect the unexpected. Yes, I think that's been the adage all the way through.
Okay. Well, for one final question, that is, which keyboard players have been the biggest influence on you?
Well, I could certainly say Rick Wakeman's had quite a lot of influence. The Canterbury scene keyboard players like Mike Ratledge and uh, David Sinclair from Caravan, uh, they had quite a big influence on me. Certainly, some of the 70s, not disco bands, but rhythm and blues stuff like Earth, Wind and Fire, their kind of keyboard parts, Stevie Wonder, um, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock. There's all sorts of because of course when I was in music college, we were studying people like Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock, so trying to learn the fantastic solos and things like that. So that was, but I think my all-time big influence is Keith Emerson, who really not so much, well, more obviously as a player because he had an incredible technique, but the fact that you could be a keyboard player and not just have to sit at the back playing, sitting down and just playing the side man. You could actually go forward and be an integral part of a band and in some cases a leader. And I think that's what really inspired me with Keith.
Okay, I'd like to thank you kindly for doing this interview. I wish you the best of luck
Okay.
with the Yes tour, which I believe starts in about a week or so's time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, dear, about Alan White not being well enough to do the tour.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure
It's
it's going to be
unfortunate.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, I saw an interview with Alan White recently, and I must admit, he didn't look particularly well. I was wondering
Yeah.
whether he'd be able to make the tour.
Yeah. He don't, I don't think he's too well at the moment, so we're hoping that he's going to, it probably would be a bit too much for him at this stage. So, but we're hoping him, wishing him as well, and hope he can make it next time.
Okay, anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for doing this interview and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Barry.
Okay,
Okay.
bye-bye.
Bye bye. Bye now.